Hey guys, Jack's your Auto Mechanic. Today we're going to be working on this 2000 Jeep Wrangler. Specifically, the repair we're going to go after is doing the evaporator core. And since we're going to have to tear the dash apart, pull the column down, take the whole heater box assembly apart, we're going to go ahead and replace the heater core at the same time. And before you get started, if you've got a couple of hose clamps around, they're heater hose clamps, this will save you some time. They also recommend that you drain the entire coolant system. I don't see where you need to do that. If you've got a couple of these clamps, you can just clamp off the two heater hoses and you'll have a little mess no matter what you do, even if you drain it. So same mess is going to occur right underneath your hose connections, right up against the firewall. Just put a little drain pan under there before you get started. Throw a couple of clamps on your hoses and you just saved yourself an hour anyway. You can see I already took the battery cable loose. I just put some tape on there to kind of protect it in case it accidentally touches while I'm removing the battery. That's not a bad idea on these older ones. You go ahead and put a little shot of WD-40 on these battery mount bolts before you remove them. And most of the bolts and screws are Phillips head, but these are Torx bit, and they actually take T27 Torx head. So you'll need one of those to get that off of there. There's one screw. Once you remove the ashtray, one screw in here, and then you can use your pry tool and get up underneath there, and you'll be able to get your center console piece loose. And you don't want to forget about the two screws on top. Take those loose and this will come the rest of the way off. We'll remove a few screws, a couple of screws there, here. We'll pop this off of there. That'll get us some access for underneath our steering column. So got that out of the way, and there'll be a bolt there, bolt on the other side, and then a bolt here, and one on the other side, holding the column in, 13 millimeter. Those 4 bolts, and it should allow this column to come loose. So I want to take the cluster panel cover off. Screw here, screw on the other side, and then you've got 3 across the back. 1, 2, 3. Take those loose. And they're all Phillips head, which will be hard to get a Phillips in there, so a 1/4 inch socket will do it. And you can pull this cover off. Once you get your 4 screws out, you can gently wiggle it loose and remove the wires. Now we've got the cluster out of the way. We've got our steering wheel bolts removed and dropped. We can go up to the top, and there are 4 10 millimeter bolts across the top. We'll remove those, and that should allow us to be able to pull the panel off and get to the wires and connectors that are behind our radio and that kind of stuff. And there's an airbag connector over here we need to get to as well. I'm also noticing that the console is going to have to be able to be moved back. So it looks like there's two 10mm bolts inside the center console part and one inside the cup holder, if you can get to it. Might have to clean some stuff out from around it. Loosen that up and we should be able to move that back. And we'll be able to pull our dash panel loose. And there's also two bolts at the bottom of the console that need to be removed, 10mm. And you'll need to pop this up with a pry tool, or not. I did it to reach up inside here and pop this up loose. And then down inside here is one last 10mm. They got that sucker hit on you. Once you get that loose, then you should be able to slide it back to where you can get the dash pulled loose. Yeah, just a little lift and twist, and she's out of the way. You've got plenty of room to get around in here. We should be able to pull this forward once we remove the bolts on top and undo our plugs. And this yellow connector right here, this is your airbag plug. You want to unplug that. Be real gentle with the clip. You know, about 20 years old. And once you get the yellow connector done, you want to disconnect this hose. And I think we can just disconnect our vacuum lines here instead of at the very back of the console. You want to be gentle with this tab. Lift that up, pull this apart. And looks like our antenna or radio, we need to disconnect that. This one's already got an aftermarket radio installed in it. The factory one I think may have a ground strap on the back that might need to be disconnected. I'm not certain. I've got our bolts loose, connectors loose. So it looks like I've got a couple other connectors down here. Not sure. This is our courtesy light wiring. This green connector is going to have to come loose. And everything else looks pretty much out of the way. So, the tip, wrap some duct tape on that, tape it to the window. Otherwise, it's just going to be in your face and in your way the whole time. And we've pretty much got this under control. There's one screw right here that's underneath. It'll have to be removed. And we'll come back out to the front. And there's 5 bolts. One down here. One here. One here. And then there's one there and one just below it. And they're nuts on studs. You'll have to remove those. And then we'll take our hoses loose. And right here's our drain hose. You'll need to remove that too. But at the bottom of it, I don't know if you can see that too well, but that fluorescent dye, that's where it was coming out of. That's how we knew the evaporator was leaking and where all the air conditioning freon was going. We'll go ahead and just take that off now. You can see the fluorescent, that's not coolant. That's the fluorescent green stuff that you put in the oil to see where your leak is. Before you take your hoses loose, you might want to put a drain pan underneath, right below where you're going to take them loose. Once it's attached, you just squeeze it and it locks into place. And you just walk it off, release until you finally get it loose enough to where it breaks free. You'll feel it. Now you can see it's moving pretty good. And sometimes you can just put a little pressure and walk it off. And sometimes the assistant with a little tool, you can get that up underneath there. Put a little pressure. Kind of walk that around a little bit. And they make ones that are longer too, but in this tight space. And while we're in the area, and before I forget, you need to disconnect that vacuum hose, because it comes right out of your air box. If you don't, you run the risk of snapping and breaking that air hose, and you're not going to want to do that. So I thought I'd show you something I ran into. I got these two nuts off pretty easy. However, this one, you can see I ended up having to put a pair of channel locks because it stripped out. So I'm holding it with the channel lock or the vice grips and just turning it quarter turn at a time with a wrench to get it off. The one on the bottom, you'll end up pulling this drain out. This is like your front vent drain. Just set that off to the side, and then you'll have to take the nut off of the back side of it. So that bottom one's double nutted, more or less. And all these bolts, I think I might have said they were 10 millimeter. They're 11 or 7/16, whatever you got. So now we're going to need to take the evaporator lines loose. Again, the system should be recovered, evacuated. This one's completely leaked out, so I know there's not anything in there. You're going to need to get some of these fancy looking things, or make one. The idea is to put it over top, work it in, and there's a spring inside there that puts tension on it. So this is just opening the spring up inside there. Once you get it in, you should be able to just pull the lines loose. And if you need some, I'll put a link down below in the text. There are two different sizes. And you'll go ahead and do that and then work the line loose. Just like that. So we took the line off, one line, and then turns out I'm missing from my old set the next size that I need. So I ended up ordering a new set. These are kind of dated, broken. You can see part of it's chipped off on the fuel line. So went online, found these, $10 thereabouts, and it's got the sizes that we need. which I think is the 5/8 and the 3/4. And I did end up taking the dryer off as well. And I went ahead and ordered a new dryer. It's a good idea anytime you open up the AC system to replace the dryer. So I went ahead and got one of those. I'll put a link down below for the tool and for the dryer if you need one. Now we're going to move back inside and remove this one last bolt. All right, looks like it's loose. I'm just gonna wiggle it a little. Yes. Twisting it this way. One, so it'll come out, and two, there's still some coolant inside the heater core, and some leaked out into the floor mat there. Looks like she's out. Oh, there it is. Not too hateful. Just a couple of drops. But if you're watching the video ahead of time, go ahead and throw yourself a towel down or something. Know that it's going to happen. Everything else looks in pretty good shape. No wires hung up. So now we'll just need to split the box, and then we'll take out our evaporator core and our heater core. Looks like most of them, or all of them, are just 8mm. So we'll just go around the edge, take all of these bolts loose. All right, so I've taken 12 bolts out of it, and then we'll get down to where these seals are glued. You can see it's right along the line of where we split the box. And this bolt I started to take loose, and I'm not sure if it has to come all the way loose or not, but it does look like we'll need to take these two clips loose. And back to the seal, we'll have to we'll get some kind of a scraper or something, or razor blade. We want to try and save the seal, but it's glued, so we've got to get it peeled back down to the separation marks on both sides, and we need to do that for where our blower motor goes against this seal. We'll need to bring that down. So if you don't have a razor blade, you could probably use a screwdriver or something, but whatever you can use to get in behind there, you just want to work it around. You're not trying to take too much away. So now we've got it loose. Shouldn't be in our way of taking the box apart. Go ahead and do the same thing on this seal. Once you get it peeled away, you'll make sure you get down here. Again, you'll run across the wire that goes through there. You'll want to be careful of that when you're peeling that gasket off of there. So I did end up peeling that off all the way around and taking this off. just to try and make things a little easier. So I started seeing about taking it apart, and I overlooked one screw. And it is right here. I don't know if you can quite see it, but it's hidden right below this connector. So I need to take that off. To get to it. I'm not quite sure why I didn't think of it, but you'll have to remove the blower motor. So that gets that out of the way. And voila, she comes apart. And it looks like we've got this green vacuum line. You don't want to go yanking on anything. Make sure you don't break anything. And got the one green vacuum line there. And on this side, we need to disconnect this actuator. And it just unplugs. Green hose. Rest it. And then should be able to just lift that off. In our case, we had a leaking evaporator. As you can see, it's been leaking pretty good for a while. And heater core doesn't look too bad. Really? So yeah, we can see that it's been leaking for a while. All the oil saturated over everything. And of course, you want to clean your air box, remove any kind of debris or anything that's oil, that kind of stuff. All right, so now we've got it apart. Everything is disassembled. I went ahead and used some paper towels and cleaned out the leftover oil and debris that was in here, a few leaves. Next step is to put our new replacements in. We've got a brand new evaporator. Nice clean shape. And we've also got ourselves a brand new heater core. Looks in good shape. They both look to be about the same as the ones that we took out. So that's a good thing. It's not a bad idea to set them next to each other and make sure everything lines up the same. So all we got to do is put everything back in. Should you need a heater core or an evaporator core yourself, I do have a link down below in the description. Of course, if you haven't subscribed by now, please hit the subscribe button. Subscribe. It does help us out a little bit. Next thing we're going to do is just put our box back together. Start by putting our heater core back in. When I took the old one out, this piece slid up and fell out. It took me a minute to figure out where it went, but it slides right in place. You want to make sure that it's in the right spot. When you put your heater core back in, everything lines right back up. Take our new evaporator core, set in there. We'll make sure you get our rubber gaskets on it, right place. Now, I'm noticing that the old one has some foam pieces on it to hold it in place, I suppose. So I think I'm going to go ahead and peel this off of there and put it on the new one. And we'll put it back together. There's some pins to help you line it up. And of course, you want to keep this right in the center over here. And if it doesn't slide together nice and easy, stop. Take a step back, find out why. And it should just slide back together, and then we'll put our screws in place. So we've got it all situated back on there. I did have this little orange hose. Wanted to keep getting underneath there and getting our pins lined up, but we got her on. And the first bolt I want to put in is this one I referenced earlier. And it appears that it goes into a bracket that's part of the heater core. You line this up and get that started. All the rest of them are pretty much lined up, so this would be the most difficult one. But go ahead and get all your bolts started, get all your hoses hooked back up, get it ready to put right back in. And then you can put some adhesive spray on here or just set it on there if you think it'll stay. But that's up to you. A little bit of glue, something. Now we got our button back up. Next thing to do is see if we can get it back in there. Pay attention to your studs if they get realigned. Now you can see we've got her in there. We want to pay attention to get things lined up back in their respective locations. And it's okay if you want to leave this one loose for now, and then we can go back, get the nuts started on the studs on the outside, get it snugged up, and this will line up a little bit better. You can see it's mounted back up in there. I left this loose just a little bit, so we still got some play in case we need the room to line things up on the other side. So go back out here. Make sure that our studs are sticking through in the right spots. Everything's lined up. And then we'll go ahead and put our nuts back on there, tighten that box back up in place. Something I wanted to mention, you want to put the one nut on this stud and the two nuts on the back two studs. Pull the box tight. You're going to still, if you still got your bracket off from your accumulator, that needs to go back on first. So we'll swap out the accumulator, put our new one on. I went ahead and ordered a new one. I'll put a link down below if you need one of those. We'll put that on, and then I'm going to put new O-rings on our lines before we hook those up. But let's go ahead and get everything started, get everything buttoned back up. Now we've got the box tightened up. I went ahead and tighten up the one single bolt inside here. Then we're going to go ahead and mount our fuse box back up and our relays. Then we can work on getting our dash panel mounted back up. So I buttoned everything up underneath or behind the panel. And to put the dash back on, I put a little box underneath the steering wheel to hold it up, and I hung the one stud. Remember, we've got the 4 studs that go across. I started the one stud over there, and then I'll get in there and lift the dash and set it right back into place. Alright, so we've got the dash back into place. You took all the bolts out to begin with. You know where the bolts need to go back to put it back together. Not going to spend a lot of time on that. Remember your 4 bolts putting your steering wheel and everything back on. One of the last things you want to connect will be that yellow connector for your ABS wire up underneath here. Fasten everything back the same way that it came off. We're going to go ahead and swap our dryer out. Loosen this bolt, 8mm. Just take the bracket off. Go ahead and loosen the high pressure switch. Take it off. Get our new accumulator out, or dryer, whatever you want to call it. And if it doesn't come with an O-ring, you'll want to put a new one on it. It doesn't have to be tight. This is plastic, so don't put a wrench on it and snap it. You'll want to, but don't. And while you're down here getting ready to mount the bracket, don't forget to hook up your vacuum line that we had. Hook that up. And then we'll go ahead and mount the bracket onto the studs. And also not a bad idea to remember to put your hose in while I'm thinking about it. It's just your drain hose. So our next step in the process is going to be to change out our O-rings. If you haven't gotten an O-ring kit, I'll put a link to this one down below in the description. Just a little pick, and you can get underneath and just ease those off. You want to replace the O-rings on both lines before you connect them to your evaporator. And we'll go ahead and take care of that real quick. Get them connected and hook up our heater hoses, put our clamps back on, top off our coolant, and should be getting pretty close. Make sure you hear the click. Get your lines on tight and hook your high pressure switch up if you want to. And then we're going to go ahead and Put our heater hoses back on. Now I've just got to reinstall the battery tray. I did paint over a little bit of the rust area for a minute. So I did manage to clean up the battery tray. Again, I'm not really sure what that is. If somebody knows, holler. But I ended up using this Rust-Oleum rubberized undercoating. Turned out pretty good. I don't think we're going to see any rust in the near future out of it. So we'll go ahead and put that in. So now we've got our heater core installed, our evaporator core installed, everything tightened back up. Last thing you might want to take care of is topping off your coolant level before you run the engine. And we'll go ahead and do a separate video on recharging your air conditioning system. Thanks for watching.